What up, Viking fans? Thank you for tuning in to the Skol State of Mind podcast. As you already know, I'm your host, D Woods, and we about to talk about free agency. I mean, free agency been crazy for the past couple of hours. You got players coming, you got players leaving, you got some surprise signings, and we're going to dive into it. This video, we're going to talk about basically how I feel about the Minnesota Vikings signings, what I think they should do in the future, and what the vision is going to be in the draft, considering some of the holes that the Minnesota Vikings filled in free agency. So let's dive into it. First, we're going to talk about the departures. So Marcus Davenport signed a 1-year deal with the Detroit Lions. I mean, I really don't know what kind of player they're getting, considering he probably only played like 2 games for us. I mean, he was kind of dominant in the 2 games that he played. So I don't know what they're getting because he was injured majority of the time. I'm not one of those people that come on here and be like he shouldn't have played, hurt and stuff like that. I mean, the boy had surgery, so maybe he was really dealing with something. So Marcus Davenport's gone. Jordan Hicks signs a 2-year deal with the Cleveland Browns. I mean, is what it is. I wasn't predicting Jordan Hicks to be back with the Vikings. I mean, I kind of felt they were going to go younger, more athletic, maybe, sign a couple of linebackers in free agency and, draft 1 or 2. So thank you, Jordan Hicks, for your time. But think about Jordan Hicks is like the first year, it was kind of like, dang, like the boys cooked. And that basically showed like how bad Donatello's defensive scheme was. And then Flores comes in here and he has a resurgence of his career. So hats off to you, Jordan Hicks. Last year you played, pretty well, then you had that injury kind of slowed you up. But the biggest departure as of right now, Kirk Cousins. We already heard the echoes for the past couple of weeks about Kirk Cousins was going to explore free agency and, he wanted to see what other teams was going to offer and he wasn't going to take a hometown discount. I don't know why people even thought that. Then yesterday there was reports that he let the Vikings know that he was really going to officially explore free agency, and he did that. So in the first couple of hours of free agency, Kirk Cousins signs with the Atlanta Falcons on a 4-year deal worth $180 million. Basically, it's a 2-year deal with 2 years guaranteed, in my opinion, because the last two years of the contract, there's no real guarantees on that. So 4 years, $180 million, $50 million in the signing bonus, and $100 million guaranteed. Basically 2 years guaranteed is what it is. So Kirk's going, so it leaves a massive hole for the Minnesota Vikings. But I look at it like this: like, I'm not finna come on this channel and basically bash Kirk Cousins because we had some good times with him, we had some bad times with him. It is what it is. But I kind of like tip my hat off to Kwesi Adolfo-Mensa for basically standing his ground and not making the same mistakes that the past regime did. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I was all in on signing Kirk Cousins in 2018 because I felt that he was the missing piece on this team. And we were already in the NFC championship game. And I kind of felt like if we had a better quarterback than what we had in Case Keenum, and that's not shitting on Case Keenum because Case Keenum did his thing that year. But if we had a better quarterback, then maybe we can reach the Super Bowl and actually get a Super Bowl win. But if you really look at what we got with Kirk Cousins for 6 years, we've only been to the playoffs twice. And, we only won 1 playoff game. So it's kind of disappointing, but that's what happens in free agency. Sometimes you sign guys and your expectations are high, and sometimes you don't reach those expectations. So it is what it is. But throughout the whole Kirk Cousins thing, like, I'm happy because this starts a new era for the Minnesota Vikings. Like, I'm more excited for this year's draft because I really hope that the Vikings can actually move up in the draft or stay pat and draft their quarterback of the future. Like, I'm really big on that, and I can see that happening. I mean, there's a lot of debate right now about, what the Vikings should do for a stopgap quarterback or a bridge quarterback, whatever you want to call it. I like Sam Darnold. Um, I know Nick Mullins is already on the roster, but I like Sam Darnold for his maturity factor because I like the way he approached the season, with the 49ers. He knew he had no real shot of actually starting for that team with Trey Lance on the roster, Brock Purdy. And he kind of like played his role, put his head down or whatever, because a lot of people out there are going to say, like, well, you're going to bring Sam Darnold in, he's a bust, he's ass. How is he going to teach the, young quarterback, of the future? I don't look at it as Sam Darnold teaching the younger quarterback. I look at that's the quarterback coach job. So, and I think that's the reason why we brought in Josh McCown to basically, help out the next quarterback of the future, rookie quarterback, whatever. So it's going to be real interesting to see like what happens in free agency with the quarterback, because I feel like even though Nick Mullins is on the roster, the Minnesota Vikings is going to need a bridge, at some point. But Kirk era is done. And so let's move on to the free agent acquisitions that the Minnesota Vikings have signed. So, like, I don't think anybody even saw this happening. Like, Jonathan Greenard from the Houston Texans was like one of the first signings that the Minnesota Vikings did in free agency. When I saw this, I was like, dang, does this mean that Danielle Hunter is basically going to sign elsewhere? Because the Minnesota Vikings gave him a 4-year deal for $76 million. I mean, he's like 26 years old. He had like 12 sacks last year. Like, I'm excited for it. That was a name like I never really thought about because I was so bent on Danielle Hunter. But like, I'm excited for that. Like, I like the way that the Minnesota Vikings are, looking for younger defensive players, versatile players. So, hey, welcome to the Minnesota Vikings, baby. Then also, the Minnesota Vikings signed Blake Cashman, also from the Houston Texans. He's a linebacker. We lost Jordan Hicks in free agency to the Cleveland Browns. So, hey, fill a need. Then, another linebacker, Andrew Van Ginkel. I'm going to be butchering that all year. I got to get that right. So another young backer, he's more of like a pass rushing, situational type linebacker, edge rusher. So I'm cool with that too. But what this shows me is that Brian Flores' influence on the defense, where he wants to get his guys, and it's showing me the vision that the Minnesota Vikings are trying to do in free agency. Because if they are signing defensive players to plug the holes that Brian Flores is basically like picking to help with his scheme, then I'm willing to bet that the draft will be more tailored on the offensive side. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that the Minnesota Vikings still could sign for offense, but for the first three, players the Minnesota Vikings signed to be defensive players, that lets you know, like, hey, we got a vision right now. We are preparing right now for the Minnesota Vikings to draft a rookie quarterback. And the best thing you can have for a rookie quarterback is two things. You can have a consistent running game and a good defense. And it seems like the Minnesota Vikings are leaning towards having a good defense. I mean, we still need some help on a defensive line, like some beefy defensive tackles. Like, I want to see that. That could be something that they draft, or if there are any guys that Brian Flores think that would fit his scheme coming here, like, I'm open to it. But let's talk about some of the signings that have happened, throughout the league. So, as you guys know, I was big on Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley goes to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, this is something that's crazy that happened with the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers signed Josh Jacobs while asking Aaron Jones for 50% pay cut. The next thing you know, they cut Aaron Jones. And also, the Green Bay Packers cut David Bakhtiari. I mean, he's been injured for the past couple of years, so that's basically like cutting costs. But word on the streets, Aaron Jones might be interested, might be mutual interest from the Minnesota Vikings. Hey, I like Aaron Jones as a running back. I mean, you still got Derrick Henry out there. I mean, if you compare Aaron Jones with a Ty Chandler, I like that. But we're gonna see. But also Joe Mixon got cut too. And Joe Mixon's only like 26 years old. So maybe you can sign him to maybe a 2-3 year deal. So the Minnesota Vikings is cooking right now. And I'm looking at it like this though, too. Like the narrative with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensa, the past couple of weeks that yeah, he was gonna buckle for Kirk Cousins and he basically, was gonna, comply to all the demands. Nah, I love the fact that Kwesi drew his lines in the sand, stated what he wanted to do, let the Kirk Cousins camps know, hey, this is our number. We ain't moving too far from it. What you want to do, bam. And I really like the respect that Kwesi basically let the Kirk Cousins era be over after Kirk Cousins officially, you know, signed with the Atlanta Falcons. He put out a statement. It's over. Moving on. So free agency is just now heating up, and it's going to be a lot more topics to talk about, in the next couple of days. So I'm gonna try my best, to come bring you guys more content, on a daily basis, a couple of shorts or whatever, just so you guys can kind of see, what I'm thinking and let you know my views real quick. But damn, Kirk Cousins gone. Like it is what it is. It's a new era in Viking football. So on that note, I'm gonna end it like this. Skol, baby.